Diplomacy, it is about the art of compromise. You have to put yourself into the other country's shoes in order to get some kind of agreement on things. And the things you can't compromise on are the ones that you ultimately use a different tool, force. But diplomacy is the bread and butter aspect of relationships between countries.
Madam Albright, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm an African-American journalist. From age 9, I watched Afghanistan fall apart. If you could advise the Trump administration, what advice would you have for the administration in terms of diplomacy with Afghanistan, with Turkey at this juncture? Why is the exchange of religious figureheads being allowed to become the pivot in the diplomacy between Turkey and in the United States? And how can the United States change that in a positive direction? Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just say, and Strobe, I think, can testify to this, is I was a Turkophile. In fact, what happened, I was in the Carter administration, was there when we lifted the Turkish embargo. And I spent a lot of time learning about Turkey and going to Turkey. I thought that Turkey should be a member of the EU. The Europeans told me to mind my own business. But I really do think there was a problem about constantly moving the goalposts in terms of how Turkey should behave in order to be a member of the EU. They have been a very staunch NATO ally, whether it was in Korea, various places, a really remarkable NATO ally. What I think is interesting, and this goes a lot to the democracy question in itself, is that as much as I liked going to Turkey, it still was run by some elitists, people who lived on the other side of the Bosporus in the big houses, or the military. And Erdogan won the election fair and square because the AKP really did do constituency services. And it was fascinating to be in Turkey at the time as the economy was really moving forward. I do think that the tragedy is that power goes to people's heads, and Erdogan is not the same person, I don't think, at all. And the kinds of things that he is doing now are very damaging in terms of relationships in the Middle East and what he's and as a NATO ally and all of those things. I think that there is an internal religious fight in Turkey between the Gulenists and the AKP people, and it is being played out frankly, in a crazy way in terms of blaming Gulenists for everything. And I think the pastor it is symbolic in some ways, but it is also very typical of the kind of thing. Erdogan is arresting journalists and then being an autocrat in every single way. He's on my list of leaders that I talk about. And I think it is, again, the news today in terms of what's happening in Syria and the role of the Turks and the Kurds. And I've never seen anything so complicated. And we have no ambassador there. And it is unclear what our policy is. And it's pretty tough to see a NATO ally buying Russian arms. And at the same time, the whole aspect of NATO in terms of intelligence sharing and various things. So I think it is a truly difficult situation that would require a very consistent and smart policy from the United States. And I don't know where it's coming from at the moment. Not a very good answer, but it truly is an unbelievably complicated thing. And this pastor has become a symbol of a number of other aspects of it.
All of your answers have been terrific, and I wish we could keep going. But some of you are going to get books, and the Secretary will inscribe something in that, so we're going to need to have a little time.